Welcome to the Ocean Decade and Sustainable Development Panel. Today, we have a fantastic group of panelists that are going to give us a lot of insights of what is going on at the moment. I will present in a minute Roderick Reed, which will moderate this panel. But before that, I want to share with you one simple page of a report that we are releasing today at 13 p.m. And this page that I am sharing now with you shows us the degree of the disruption that we are living in today. So in the past 4 decades, the worst scenario in terms of downturn was about 0% of growth in the world economy. So when we have a year of 2020 with -3, we can understand that there is no precedence in the past 4 decades. So there is the urgent need for a recovery. And also that this recovery should mean transformation towards sustainability. And this is on the core of this panel. So I ask the Regie to take out this slide now, and I am presenting you Roderick Reed, which has a strong experience on the maritime field, not only as policy curious, but also as a very competent professional. Roderick is a passionate by sailing, so he's the perfect man to moderate this fantastic panel with Tiago, Peter, Tatiana, and Jose. So, Roderick, now the stage is yours.
Good morning. Welcome to this panel on the Ocean Decade, or to give it its full title, the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which provides a common framework to ensure that ocean science supports countries' efforts to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which is science leading international cooperation, engaging with the many stakeholders interested in the management of our oceans, and ensuring that this is for the common benefit of humanity. To help us better understand the importance of this Ocean Decade, we have an eminent panel of speakers. We have Tiago Peter Icunha of the Ocean Azul Foundation. We have Peter Hogan of the Institute of Marine Research. We have Tatiana de Abedisian of the Economist World Ocean Initiative. And we have José Moutinho of the Atlantic International Research Center. To start us off, I would like to introduce Tiago Peter Cunha, who has been working on ocean policies for the past 2 decades as a policymaker at the United Nations, for the government of Portugal, and at the European Commission. He is Chief Executive Director of the Ocean Azul Foundation, the motto for which is "From the Ocean's Point of View," which goes a long way to explain its perspective, I think. The foundation is deeply involved in education, awareness, engagement, and behavioral change, contributing to an innovative blue economy, as well as protecting the protection and the recovery of the ocean. It does magnificent work on promoting ocean literacy, including, but not limited to, the Lisbon Ocean area, helping prepare a blue generation for the challenges of ocean sustainability. Tiago, please.
Yeah, I'm mute. Of course, it's amazing how after more than a year, we still forget the most basic things. But hello, everyone, and thank you very much for such a generous introduction, Rod. Very nice to see you in the camera. And also let me praise Miguel for organizing this Blue Info Summit and for being so active and so enthusiastic on everything ocean related. He has been a driving force on on pushing the oceans into something more, something stronger in economic terms, coming up with reporting, always faithful to the importance of facts and figures, and this is really something that I could only commend. And finally, just before starting, let me also say hi to all my fellow panelists. It's a great pleasure to share this panel with you all. I think Roderick, I can spend a few minutes. I think I want to be as brief as possible with the vision that in a way is my vision, but of course it's primarily the vision of Oceano Azul Foundation, which, as you said, positions itself from the ocean's point of view. We have been just growing our concern in the last years. I think that 2017 was a very important year for the ocean, was the year of the first United Nations Ocean Conference in New York, where two things became quite clear. The plastic pollution and it becoming mediatic was very much also a result of that year and that effort. And also the recognition that climate change with global warming, with the storage of energy, excess energy in the ocean is creating extreme weather events. In 2017 and 2018, we had hurricanes as never before, typhoons in the Pacific, also problems in the Indian Ocean. And because of all that, and because of what we've been learning since then, the situation seems to be a bit out of control, or at least the ocean crisis is still going downhill in a way that is still aggravating. I think that two disturbing news of the last couple of years are the IUCN report on the oxygenation of the oceans and the extent of that deoxygenation. This is something that is going to give us a lot to talk in the next years. And also this very somber report of Antarctica and defrosing of parts of the continent, and therefore of what sea level rise may become. And I don't think that there are any reasons for contentment, but there are reasons for concern. And this is why it is so important, everything that is happening around the oceans with the Ocean Decade for Ocean Science, for instance, the prospectus of the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon, organized by Kenya and Portugal next year in Portugal, and of course the push for ocean protection in 30% of its surface in Kunming in China, independently of this summit taking place or not, because of the pandemic. And so I wanted to, having said that we totally need to change the situation, to say that the most two important avenues in the Foundation's opinion to address this problem is a kind of short-term one and a long-term one. The short-term one is policy making, it's decision making, it's having climate action by the international community. I think that everyone also understands that during these first 21st years of the 21st century, the oceans have been absent from the political and economic priorities of the international community. The fact that the oceans are nowhere to be seen in the Paris Agreement are a clear example of that. The fact that this nexus between oceans and climate change was officially declared in Madrid in 19 is also an evidence of how late we are coming into addressing ocean problems. And for that, we need really to push for a stronger, more robust action from the international community. I mean, from the United Nations member states. we, of course, when we think this way, we think of BBNJ, the High Seas Treaty that also has taken a long time to see the light of the day, and which is still under discussion, and maybe even now on a less good shape due to the absence of discussions because of the pandemic. And so, yes, ocean action. In Europe, it's even more, I think, important that this ocean action takes place. Europe has made great ways in climate action. We have adopted the Green Deal in January of last year. The European Union has revised all its targets for 2030 and for 2050 with neutrality, carbon neutrality in 2050 and 50% reduction in 2030. This is very commendable, but of course shows as well that the more climate action is growing in Europe with considerable funding behind, and ocean action stays put, the gap between the two gets larger. And so we really think as a foundation that we need to advocate for that ocean action by the international community. And this is why the foundation, with other foundations and other organizations, nature conservation organizations, but also fishers unions and indigenous peoples federations, we came up with the Rise Up for the Ocean, which is this blue call to action, which actually has gathered now the support of more than 500 organizations worldwide, and which was presented to the Secretary General of the United Nations and to the members of the UN by the floor of the General Assembly at the last PrepCom for the UN Ocean Conference that is going to take place next year. The second, of course, long-term issue is the economy. We all know that we'll not be able to save the oceans if we don't change the economy. And of course, changing the economy, it's what is underlined on the Green Deal and on this digital and green transition. And here, I think we could discuss a lot within our panel on which ways and directions we should think when we would like to, way to see a blue economy as a contributor to our most important challenges, starting by decarbonization of our societies and our economies in Europe, and also, of course, reducing the exploitation of natural resources of a planet that is presenting all signals of being exhausted. And this is what I wanted to say as an introduction. I think, Roderick, sorry if I spoke a bit too much, but I would leave it as it is. Thank you.
Tiago, that was perfect. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, you bring up a number of extremely important points, which I'm sure other speakers may pick up on. But for the moment, we're going to pass on to Professor Hogan, who is the program director at the Institute of Marine Research in Norway, and professor of oceanography at the Geographical Institute in the University of Bergen. As the former chair of the IOC, the International Oceanographic Commission of the UNESCO, he has been heavily involved in the preparation of the UN Decade for Ocean Science and for Sustainable Development. So he has a lot to say to us, I'm sure. He is in charge of the international work and global development at the Institute of Marine Research, which is one of the largest research organizations of its kind, whose aim is to help society through its research to continue to exploit value assets from the sea sustainably. Professor Hogan.
Thank you very much, Rod. I hope you can hear and see me, and if not, tell me about what I should do. Yeah, thank you. And let me start by saying what a joy it is to be invited to be on this panel. I enjoyed what was just said. Every word of what was just said in the previous speaker, I think I can subscribe to it and underline the value of the various initiatives, the various reports, the various topics, the various fora for making a change towards a sustainable ocean. I think that we are in a crucial time for the ocean right now. And what I would like to do is say a few words about the ocean decade and where we want to go with it and hopefully can go with it. And then how that can relate to actors who are not only scientists. I mean, we heard in the previous panel about science and innovation. And I believe science and innovation will be at the forefront of the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon next year. How can that contribute to sustainable development? But I think it's important that the decade and also the various activities linked to it are not only for scientists, not only for the people who go to sea and make measurements. It's about for everybody who is interested in the ocean. We have a strong component on ocean literacy to make people aware of the qualities of the ocean and appreciate it, and thereby can also help in the policy development. Because if we don't have the public interested, if we don't have people, not only the beach dwellers and the people who fish in the ocean, but everybody has to understand more about the crucial role of the ocean for sustainable development. So that's part of that. Starting perhaps with the UN Ocean conferences, the first one was in New York in 2017. And at that time, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission actually proposed this decade as a voluntary commitment, coming only from the science community in a way, in the scientific organization. And then it developed very rapidly, was approved by the UN General Assembly late in 2017. And we've had 3 years now to prepare it. So it better be a good one because of all of the work that has gone into the preparation phase. And I'm happy to say that it's starting on time. It's not been delayed by COVID. There is no time to waste. 2030 is kind of the end of the decade, and also Agenda 2030. We have to get moving. And there are many programs and actions which were launched at the World Ocean Day, 8th of June, that are starting, and organizations are in place to deal with that, and there will be more and more. But I like to make a very strong point to everybody who is listening here that this UN decade is not only and not primarily a UN decade. In order to succeed, we need to make this decade into a movement for policy, a movement for action, action groups and people in society, because it's the combination of science, policy and action that can lead to a sustainable ocean in 2030. There are defined outcomes of the decade that we like to see: a clean ocean, a predicted ocean, a sustainable and productive ocean, and so forth and so on, an inspiring and engaging ocean. Science can provide the background for this, but there's always a need, a big space for wise policy decisions, and it doesn't come only by science. I think we see a lot of not only people my age who care about this ocean decade. We see early career ocean professionals, which are coming really to the forefront and taking part in this. But we also see the link to the public at large. What we really need to do is to make sure that the world understands these connections that exist. I'm pleased when I talk at an event hosted by Portugal to note the very good collaboration that we've had, not only between Norway and Portugal, but between 14 heads of state in the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, which has been working for the past 2 to 3 years, delivered its transformations document last December, and also has produced a large number of science and expert group reports over that period. And the key message for that from that panel actually is that we can actually combine effective protection, sustainable production, and equitable prosperity. These things are win-win-win. They are not in competition with each other. So when we talked about the climate ocean nexus, we've talked about the impacts of climate change on the ocean, which are devastating. I mean, in some of the tropical fisheries may decrease by up to 85%, creating big problems for the coastal population. But there are also solutions to climate in the ocean and in the ocean economy sectors. Offshore wind is coming up in the North Sea, but also elsewhere around the world. We have identified in the reports for the high-level panel contributions from ocean-based renewable energy, maritime transport, fisheries and aquaculture, coastal ecosystem management, and also, in fact, carbon storage in the seabed, which is the least certain of these, but which may actually come to fruition. And then we can take more than a fifth of the emission gap needed by 2050 to go down to a 1.5 degree scenario, which is what we need. Ocean acidification is threatening the ocean, in addition to the climate warming, the deoxygenation that was mentioned. We can also see a lot of possibilities for more food from the ocean. There is, in addition to the biodiversity event later this year and the climate ocean nexus, there is a UN food summit coming up, where blue food, aquatic food from ocean, rivers and lakes, really has to make it to the agenda for nutritious food to a growing world population, and to make sure that we can develop also aquaculture in a sustainable way. More shellfish, more of the unfed aquaculture has great potential, and we've lined that up. So I think this storytelling narrative that we can make the ocean economy sectors really be solutions to the problems and not be in competition with protection. We see marine protected areas can provide nursery grounds and provide for more fisheries and of course sustainable tourism and other activities. We really need to, tell these stories, get them understood, and get them out to the public, so that we can have the right policies in place. And I'm really looking forward to the UN Ocean Conference next year. I think by that time, the mantra of the high-level panel of 100% sustainable management of all areas within national jurisdiction of those countries will have to be brought to all coastal and ocean states, but also eventually to the international areas. The BBNJ, biological diversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, complicated name was mentioned. It's a key arena. I totally agree with that. And we need to bring these concepts from the national states into the regions and into the international areas. I could talk a lot more about Norway, Portugal collaboration. I know we will hear from the Air Center. There's a lot of exciting things up, but maybe I'll stop there and we can get back to it maybe later in the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Hogan. That was really tremendous as well. Well, there's a lot of material that you covered there. But I'm going to pass on to our next speaker, who herself has been promoting a lot of these issues through the World Ocean Initiative. I'm talking about Tatiana de Avedisian. I hope I pronounced that right, Tatiana, who is Business Development Manager for the Economist Group, and in particular the World Ocean Initiative. She is also Vice President and Trustee of Alkeonides UK, a charity supporting low-income Cypriot families receiving medical treatment in the UK, and also an active member and trustee of the Armenian Institute. She is, in her own words, passionate about sustainability, human rights, history, politics, and philanthropy. And I expect that many of the people that are listening to this will have accompanied the World Ocean Week that took place at the beginning of March this year. Tatiana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roderick. Great to see everyone. And thank you, Miguel, for pulling this together. I think it's a very important discussion. And, I'll give a little bit of a background about the World Ocean Initiative and sort of following on from Professor Hogan's, comments about storytelling, The Economist has been running the World Ocean Summit for the last, coming on to 9 years now, where we've been bringing various different ocean stakeholders using The Economist's convening power to bring these different stakeholders together to have these important discussions. And over the years, what we found was that, the event alone, although very popular and very much in, a staple event in the ocean community calendar, we needed to do more. And so we developed the World Ocean Initiative website, which offers insight and analysis into some of these core issues. And we look at it through 3 lenses: finance, governance, and innovation. We see these 3 core issues as the missing links sometimes in a lot of these issues, and sort of picking up on things that Tiago was talking about as well. The underfunding of ocean research. We need to sort of figure out how to plug that gap. The lack of investment in the ocean startup scene. We need to look to bridge that. Understanding our oceans, and Miguel will know about a project that is under development around making the case for making ocean data more accessible. Of course, we've got to address the issues around fisheries, illegal fishing, and overfishing, the future of aquaculture, and of course, plastics, and all the great initiatives. And we've been working, and we've been trying to tell these stories through news content, but also working with some of these stakeholders to help tell these stories better. And one of the new initiatives that we launched recently was the Back to Blue initiative, with the support of the Nippon Foundation, which is a 3-year collaboration focusing on ocean pollution and the escalating challenges posed by plastic pollution, and less visibly pollution from nutrients and chemical containments that are damaging ocean life and the ecosystems. This program will allow us to utilize The Economist's group resources, such as the Economist Intelligence Unit, through original research, stimulating dialogue at places like the World Ocean Summit. And of course, we've got the World Ocean Summit Asia Pacific event coming up later this year. We've been working with organizations like Blancpain on marine protected areas, telling those stories through film, and of course, engaging in research around the future of blue energy, and so on. So, we are very much trying to act as a platform to help tell these stories and to bring these different stakeholders together so that there is more communication and more collaboration. We can see more of that happening. So we're trying to play our part in this dialogue and over this next decade.
Well, thank you, Tatiana. The Economist, I hope everybody is a reader, obviously has been fundamental in telling the story consistently, as you point out, for the last 9 years of holding the World Ocean Summit and many other initiatives. I'm now going to pass on to José Moutinho, who is the Chief Business and Networking Officer at the AIR Center, which is the Atlantic International Research Center, which is an international collaborative framework to address challenges and local priorities in the Atlantic Ocean. Working with national and international scientific and research infrastructures, the AIR Center works on the development of ideas, policies, research programs, and projects within the context of the Atlantic Ocean, aligning national priorities and global challenges through joint actions. Its emphasis is on long-term collaboration and transdisciplinary research for societal impact involving research institutions, governments, startups, SMEs, large companies, engineering centers, and civil society. It was a lot in that, José. So yeah. We're looking forward to hearing about you and AIR Center. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Roderick, for the introduction. And thanks to Miguel so much for organizing this invitation. I'm really honored to be among this very interesting group of panelists. And much has been said already, as Tiago, Peter, and Tatiana said. We are facing a great number of global challenges. And you already pointed for some potential solutions or actions taken to tackle these challenges. And I won't repeat them again. And I just want to highlight that collaboration, data and infrastructure sharing, stakeholder engagement are key ingredients to co-create the ocean we want. And this is a very important point to understand their center. Instead of talking about this challenge again, so we'll shift the conversation to what we, as the Air Center, we've been doing trying to do in the last 4 years. Now, the Air Center is an internationally networked organization. It's not focused on scientific papers or industry patents. I mean, we are oriented to force job creation and knowledge-driven economic development in Atlantic region. We are pretty much focused on the Atlantic region. And it goes a little bit beyond the typical ocean science institution because we integrate space, climate, earth, energy, and data, and ocean science, of course, and promoting cooperation across the Atlantic Ocean. We always try to align national and regional priorities and global challenges, basically the ones identified by the UN Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Paris Agreement, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Reductions. And more recently, you are very much involved on trying to promote and support the UN Decade of Ocean Science and the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance. And to understand a little bit what we are trying to bring to the table as a very young organization, we are trying to advance science and technology in a transformative scale in the Atlantic region. We are not creating something new, but building on and expanding the abilities of other organizations that are already existing. And it's very interesting because we are trying to advance, technological and scientific knowledge and putting together a very large constellation of actors and trying to point them to some shared targets. And that's why what we've been doing is recruiting and orchestrating a complex web of organizations, individuals, and always focusing on society challenges. And just to finish, all this complexity to what we are doing because we are really a multidimensional, mission-oriented and problem-solving approach. We integrate various sciences, as I said, space, ocean, earth, climate, energy, data sciences. We involve different stakeholders, government, academia, industry, and civil society. We cover diverse geographies, cultures, and technology readiness levels. We have partners in the North America, South America, Africa, Europe, and with a lot of focus on the small island states and other overseas territories in the Atlantic region, more and more engaged with, for example, the Caribbean right now, Macaronesia. And we always try to accommodate both local priorities and global challenges. So that's our way to tackle, to address this challenge. All the other panelists already said something. We try to understand what people need in the coastal communities, local governments, and try to create the necessary mechanisms to collaborate, or sometimes even try to find funding to develop projects that could address these local priorities and global challenges. So in a nutshell, that's what we've been doing, and that's what we are trying to contribute to the UN Decade of the Ocean.
Well, thank you, Jose. You started by saying that coming last, you were worried that various the topics you wanted to cover had already been said, but I think you managed to pull out of the bag a number of new ones as well, particularly the integration of various sciences, space, climate, as well as the ocean sciences and things like that. So I'm going to come round again to Tiago, and I'm going to ask you, if I may, Tiago, because I'm aware that one of Ocean Azul Foundation's activities is the support of marine research, which I think you'll agree is very collaborative in nature. What do you think we can learn about the power of collaboration in scientific research for other areas? Tiago, I think you're there. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rod, for that question. Indeed, I think that as Professor Hogan was referring, I think that we all need to departure from somewhere, and the optimal departure is always from a scientific baseline. So scientific knowledge is paramount for the whole work that needs to be developed for ocean special planning, for ocean public policies, for decision making. Of course, the Ocean Azul Foundation, we do not have the resources and the means to sponsor research as it might be sponsored by more powerful resources, but we have always involved science in our work. And so as one of our very important areas of work is what we say, save what's left, which is building marine protected areas and bringing co-management schemes of fisheries for those marine protected areas in the areas that are fishable, where extraction is allowed. We have indeed resorted to scientists, not only from the proximity, the vicinity of where those marine protected areas are being developed, but also from elsewhere. And so for ocean conservation, marine science is absolutely paramount. It's without their data, without the information, it's impossible to even to start with convince stakeholders like fisher organizations of the importance of preserving areas of the ocean as in a way safes for natural capital or banks for natural capital. I would think that if this is the case for ocean conservation, this should also very much be the case for any use of the ocean. And thereby, when we listen to new uses of the ocean and the importance of continuing to extract wealth from the ocean, we think that all that should be subordinated to scientific data. And this is why we think that scientific data is going to be so important for discussions such as seabed mining and other activities that were never done before, that we do not really have an accurate assessment of the environmental impact they might have. And of course, in the 21st century, we know better, and we need to be much more careful than we've been in the last 50, 70 years, especially with overfishing and other types of fishing that, of course, should be condemned, like IU fishing. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Tiago. If I may, I will pass now to Professor Hogan again. Now, I was at the European Commission as an intern many years ago when Gro Harlem Brundtland produced her first UN report on sustainable development, Our Common Future, which I'm certain you will know very well. That was 34 years ago. And it was an important document, I think you'll agree, because it introduced the concept of sustainability to a global audience. Would you agree that at least now that sustainability as a concept is well understood in reference to the blue economy?
Thank you for that, and thank you for the discussion that's going on. This is a very, very interesting question. I think that a short answer now could be to say that, well, we actually have, with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, we now have 17 dimensions of sustainability. Because all of these have to be fulfilled, and they have to, you have to show either co-benefits or competition between them, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. And the question how to do it best with best available knowledge and science, but then again, leaving space for good policy and wisdom, if you wish. But if I think back to the 34 years ago and how that has happened, in my own country, in Norway, where Gro Harlem Brundtland was the prime minister at the time, I think the first couple of decades, we looked at ourselves and we say, sustainable development, what is that about? Well, we have to protect nature. We have to make sure that we don't destroy all of the nature. We realize that we have to create nature reserves and so on. But we did not talk very much at all about societal change, about human rights, about equity, about how to make sure that everybody has, to eradicate hunger. And these aspects, which are now, first and foremost addressed in the Agenda 2030, it took a very long time. And even if I look back, when one tried to put this into education for kids, which we did, it all happened inside the sort of a natural science domain. And I think even if I'm a natural scientist and I do care about protecting both the ocean and land, I think that's a much too narrow view of sustainable development. We still talk about that a lot. When the EU now is coming up with a taxonomy, they start to provide financial rules and try and steer finances the right way. They start with environmental impact and climate and so on. But I think that's a good start, but you have to go on and deal with all the aspects of sustainability. And if you do that, think about that. If you have to treat labor forces, in a good way, if you have to make sure to take care of local and indigenous population when you develop industries along the coast, if those criteria hurt you on your interest and your finance, if you don't do it right, I think then we have a possibility to get this change. So yes, there's been a change. There's been a good change, but it's. I think it's only in the last 5 years or so that we've really seen this happening, and we have a short time to do this, and we have to speed it up even more. We can't let these other dimensions sort of rest and be neglected as they have been to some extent in the past. And having said this, I don't think we've done what we should do with the environment side of things, and we're not through. That's not what I'm saying, but I think we need to look at all of these things in concert, and then we look at actions which are actually providing benefits for several of these things at the same time. Low energy demand scenarios, for example, combining new sources with sustainable lifestyles, and how to make sure that we don't just build bigger houses and do things which don't make us more happy anyway, but which puts more pressure on nature as well. So yeah, we need to do a lot. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, in some respects, you're saying things have been slow, but we're going in the right direction, and where there are definitely positive signs ahead in respect to understanding sustainability. I'm going to come back to you, Tatiana, if I may. The Economist has an extraordinary ability to see through the noise and identify the issues that matter. Among the many issues, the publication's commitment to the blue economy is, notably through the World Ocean Initiative, is very striking. And I noticed that in your summit of March of this year, there were a number of recurring themes, but one of them was on plastics. And I felt that there were definitely signs of ways forward. Would you agree with that?
I would. I think we're seeing a lot more not to overuse this word, but collaboration and a better understanding of the impact that plastics has on our planet, on our ocean. And there's a lot more work going on around understanding how to stop plastic waste, how to, how we can recycle that. But fundamentally, what is lacking when you're sort of analyzing a lot of this is there's a lack of funding, really. And sometimes there's also a lack of will, because it is quite a huge task to take on, and you need government support, you need private sector support, you need sort of advice and counsel from academia, from science-based research, and of course the NGO community who are working locally on the ground with a lot of these, with a lot of the communities that are affected directly by it. So I would say that there is progress, but there's a lot more to be done. There are definitely initiatives, and of course, we ourselves are analyzing this. We're doing our own research on these issues, looking at different recycling technologies, looking at the issue of, how we can improve waste management systems to sort of curb plastic waste, because again, the issue of infrastructure and the lack of funding that is allocated by governments towards infrastructure support is quite substantial and would go a long way to addressing some of these issues. So the role of policymakers, but also, informing, I don't want to use the word educating, but informing them about, what the consequences are, because with everything you have the risk and opportunities. And I think the truth is that when I look at the SDGs and my excitement about it, I remember when it was launched, was that it's an opportunity for us to create a healthier planet, a better, more sustainable economy for all of us, something that accesses us. And we talk about human rights, and this is fundamental to it, and we've got to empower local communities. So I would say that policy is a huge stumbling block that needs to be addressed, and how can we support governments in order and motivate them and figure out the finance gap as well. I think that when we start to figure out how to address those issues, then we'll really see some substantial change coming.
Tatiana, thank you very much. I knew that you were going to sneak in human rights into there somewhere. But it wasn't just you that brought it up. Actually, Professor Hogan before you was also mentioning, and Tiago before that. So it is actually, people maybe forget sometimes the importance of human rights in this whole story, and the effects on the environment and oceans has real world effects on the most vulnerable populations around the world. I'm coming back to you, Jose, if I may. This is, seems only fair to come back to you, but I have a sort of question, because it's what the Air Center is doing is very interesting, and I was wondering whether there are equivalent air centers for other oceans, or with whom do you collaborate in other oceans?
Well, yeah, that's a very interesting question. We've been so much involved on tying up, the network, orchestrating the network and creating the necessary contacts in the Atlantic Ocean, because it seems very simple for us. We link, both sides of the Atlantic, north and south, but then, completely different geographies, cultures, language. For example, we've been, most of our latest events is always translated to local language, because we saw that was a very important. Of course, English is a common language, but it's also a barrier for some other countries. So we've been spending a lot of time to link in the Atlantic, and only now you're starting to pay attention to other initiatives outside the Atlantic. But mostly we are linking them to the center through existing partners. I'll give you a good example. For us, it's very interesting to understand what is going on in the Atlantic, in the other side of, let's say, the tropical, equatorial Atlantic, and we are now connecting with Colombia. Colombia brought us, for example, the Pacific, and also brought connections to Peru, and also to Venezuela, but most important to Ecuador as well. So we're just starting to link with other initiatives, and the most important thing is for us to link. I mean, what they are doing to understand what they are doing in their different geographies that we could use in the Atlantic Ocean, and also what we have been doing right here that could be, let's say, replicate as a best practice or something like that in other areas and other oceans. But we are trying to link. The most obvious link is through South Africa. You know, it's very important, the contribution of Indian Ocean through the Agulhas leakage, for example. So this is something that we are paying attention, and even more important now, more important to link to other oceans, we are very much focused on linking pole to pole. I mean, bringing to our initiatives actors from Arctic and Antarctic. This is very important for us also.
Wow, that's pole to pole. I think that's an interesting concept to explore, actually. But if I may, I'm going to go back to you, Tiago, and come back and ask about. I mean, I think one of the great contributions of the Ocean Azul Foundation is in ocean literacy, which is a fundamental. If we don't have ocean literacy, a lot of what we're talking about this will never make sense beyond a very restricted community. So, and I know that the Lisbon Oceanarium, I think in normal times you have over 1 million visitors a year. But the Ocean Azul Foundation has many other initiatives. Would you like to expand on these other activities that you are doing in the context of which would be relevant for the Ocean Decade?
Oh, that's a great opportunity for me to expand on the programs of Ocean Azul Foundation. Thank you for this one, Rod. Yeah, very briefly on ocean literacy. So on ocean literacy, we really have this program. We have focused all our resources in children from 6 to 11 years old, because we have developed with a group of pedagogues what would be the most important in terms of impact age group, and found out that it should be on this age group. And for that, we have done something that I think has been quite successful. We basically work with primary schools, and so the teachers are our target. We work to train teachers, and then teachers deliver to kids. And of course, then we have evaluations, independent evaluations that measure the impact in kids. But I think that the key to have mobilized so many teachers, and at this moment we are working with something like 15,000, is that we are not creating an extra discipline with ocean knowledge. We are bringing the ocean into the curriculum. So we use the ocean to help teachers to tell kids how to write and how to read and how to count and how to place themselves geographically. And of course, parts goes to biology, parts goes to history. So as you know now, Europe is very much on this horizontal curriculum. So this is the trend, and thereby I think that we've been able to help teachers doing their job, and I think that is the secret of the success of our Educate for a Blue Generation. I would probably just refer very briefly to other programs. We developed a new model for creation of marine protected areas, bottom up, in which we have been, for instance, we did that in the Algarve. We found out that there was this very important reef that needed protection. And so we started working with the local university, the local organizations of fishers and other users of the sea, and also the municipalities, the local authorities. And with that, we worked for 3 years on a participatory process that had no precedence in Portugal. in as much as we started with the opposition of the great majority of fishers. We were at that time only 2 fisher associations out of the 30 that were involved were in favor of the job, and it ended up with 28 in favor. So we have delivered this to the government, turnkey, so that we commissioned the scientific studies, the economic sociological studies, the legal studies, and we have presented to the government a serious file with everything there, and with something that I think is priceless, which is the consensualization, the discussion, the interiorization of the importance. I have to say that now in Algarve, most organizations that have participated, and they were more than 70, they have the ownership of this project. They understand that preserving the ocean in this new marine protected area is going to make a difference, not only for the ocean, but only for the qualification of their territories, of their communities. And so even for their economy, because economy now needs to have the stamp of sustainability anyway. So we are now doing another case in another part of the Portuguese coastline. And I think that we are developing what needs to be done in anywhere. This can be replicated elsewhere, this kind of model. So bottom up, starting local, and then giving the job done to the government. And now, of course, we need to be assisting the government, but we think that we shortened a lot the time that needs for a marine protected area to be in place. And the last one, very brief, is the Blue BioValue, which is a very strange program for an ocean conservation. But as we believe that we need to change the economy, we believe that we need to lead by example. And so Oceano Azul, together with another foundation, the Gulbenkian Foundation, we have developed this accelerator, which had already 3 editions, in which we bring to Lisbon blue biotech startups from all over the world. I recall Tatiana referring of the underfunding for biotech, for startups. And so we sponsor these boot camps with mentors and with exchanges that would, in a way, improve not only the technology of whatever is being developed by a small startup blue biotech company, which have came from Sri Lanka or from India or from Chile or from the US or Canada, but also, of course, a great majority from Europe. And this has been proven very, really, a program that is very needed. We are happy that many of these startups managed to get funding afterwards because of the improvements on their business model, on their business plan, on the market intelligence that they acquired with our accelerator program, and also in improving their technology. So this is something that we think is going to be important, because we think that this is a way of withdrawing wealth and jobs from the ocean that doesn't require bottom trawling, of course. It's carbon neutral. It requires a careful bioprospection by all the biotech companies, but this, which is of course based in the Nagoya Protocol, and of course a lot is to be done on that. The world needs legislation on bioprospection that could help these industries develop.
Okay, thank you. I mean, you raise an extremely important point of how we can and we must create value in various ways from the oceans, and I think that's also a topic very close to your heart, Professor Hogan, as well. When you were speaking earlier, you mentioned blue food, and I think blue food is, you have, I think, some ideas you could perhaps share with us on how we can use blue food as part of the solution to create a sustainable source of protein for we're nearly at 8 billion people on the planet now. But how do you see the evolution of blue food?
Thank you very much, and apologize. I had to move a little bit, but I will listen to everything you've said.
Okay, I'm sorry to catch you.
No, that's all right. I think there's a lot of opportunities for blue food. You mean in Norway we've been doing fish farming for a long time, and there have been and there are problems with fish farming, environmental issues. There used to be a lot of use of chemicals and antibiotics and so on. There's a question of which species. There's a question of which fits here and in different conditions. But I think we're learning along the way, and also about how to get feed for fish farming is now a key issue. It doesn't help to eat fish if the fish is fed on soy from land, which is taken from land use changes, which are not very sustainable. So there are many issues, and the seafood industry has grown fast, but the seafood industry is very conscious about sustainable development and the requirements and the financial and other the market cares about sustainable seafood, and we see more and more market driven and consumer driven approaches to certifying and making sure that there's a traceability and all that. So I think that kind of seafood industry has a sustainable future, and they're very, very well aware of it. What is even more exciting, I think, is the possibility to have more shellfish and what we can call ocean vegetables, all kinds of seaweed and kelp and products like that, which we've only just seen the start of. And these are much more benign at the start, because you don't need to feed. You harvest from the ocean directly, sequester nutrients, build food, and in some cases they can also produce feed for aquaculture or finfish. So this is quite intriguing, actually, if you look at the history of agriculture, which has been around for thousands of years, and we've developed the species and the techniques and so forth. Aquaculture, with the exception of some few land-based, fish in Asia, which has a 1,000-year history, mariculture is essentially a 50-year history, really. And if you look at all the species in the ocean and all the possibilities of that, it would be strange if we wouldn't be able, with today's technology, to both find the right species and develop the right conditions to do it. This is something that requires science and innovation, for sure. But I think we're seeing an increased interest, and this is one of the areas where I think more emphasis on ocean science is really required within the framework of the Ocean Decade, geared towards sustainable solutions for food in the future. It's also issues with many countries. It's the Department of Agriculture that deals with food. And we also have to think about food not only as a commodity in the commercial market, but also as a provider of nutritious food to the poor and the starving. So it's more of actually the human right again, the access to food. And there's great, I think, scientific basis to assume that there is even more to catch or to produce from the ocean than from land, which is way ahead of us. And we shouldn't forget traditional fisheries. We can't expect to increase traditional fisheries very much, but if we don't treat it well, there will be less fish in the future. And the difference between a 20% reduction and a 20% increase is actually 50% if you do the math right. So you see that there's also quite potential to use every bit of the fish, not only the fillets, but use every bit which is nutritious. So there's a lot of work to be done here, and we need to get recognition beyond the ocean circles for this, because we can agree when we are talking to ocean people, but this food debate is dominated by people who are not well versed and not necessarily very ocean literate. So that goes back to that again. Thank you.
But you are encouraged by the way it's moving.
Well, I'm encouraged by the possibilities, which I think are large, but I think a much more effort is needed to make this in time. Yeah.
Okay. Right. as is the nature of these Zoom conferences, we do go around a bit. So Tatiana, I'm back to you. And your World Ocean Summit highlighted the importance of recurring themes around governance and the role of collaboration, the need for innovation, which you mentioned already. Are you encouraged that we're moving from position statements on these things to on or under the water initiatives making a real impact?
Yes, and I would say that even in our own summit, we found this, that, you know, for about a good part of the 7 years, we were hosting a lot of sort of broad themed discussions, sort of bringing in, you know, obviously some wonderful high level speakers, but we weren't always sort of getting to the technical issues. And so, you know, in the last 2 years, what we've done is we've actually changed the way in which we approach our agenda and really targeting the different industries within the blue economy and bringing in more participants to kind of harness a wider and a better understanding of some of these key issues. So from shipping to aquaculture to fisheries, the circular economy and sustainable tourism and so on. And what we found is that there are a lot of interesting new voices that we don't always see at some of these events, participating, sharing ideas. And one of the things that we've always prided ourselves on is that our event brings some of these organizations together to help them. They sort of develop alliances and partnerships and new initiatives. And that's what we really want to see more of. And if we can sort of bring these people together, then we're doing our part. And I guess on that, one of the other things that we're now sort of doing, and you know, the World Ocean Summit has grown exponentially. We will be in Portugal next year for the Global Summit, and we very much look forward to it and working with a lot of our on the ground supporters like the Oceano Azul Foundation. But what we've also done is, as I mentioned earlier, we've grown an event in Asia Pacific. We'll be hosting our inaugural virtual summit there later this year from the 6th to the 10th of December. And really what we want to do is use that as an opportunity to really focus on some of the regional issues there and look at it through that lens and bring in more of the sort of local voices again in that space. And fingers crossed, all going well as well, we'll be finally hosting our inaugural World Ocean Tech and Innovation Summit with the support of Canada's Ocean Supercluster and Nova Scotia Business and Halifax Partnerships in October 2022, where we will be talking more about the sort of the bridge between finance and the ocean startup community. So there's a lot that we're doing, and we hope that it's going to sort of foster more thought-provoking discussions and solutions.
Okay, thank you for that, Tatiana. Indeed, we're looking forward to having you in Portugal next year. But I think the Asia insight will feed the global conversation as well. So I mean, I think these things are extremely important, and the fact that you're getting new voices participating is so important. Otherwise, we just hear the same high-level speakers, and it begins to not work in our favor. So, Jose, we're back to you, my friend. So yes. Let's. I mean, what sets the Atlantic Ocean apart from other oceans? Or talk to. I mean, you began to mention this, but talk to me about how you find commonality with the issues that other oceans are facing and the communities around them, obviously. So what are the kind of issues you think that you will in the future seek to do? I mean, you mentioned, for example, South Africa, which obviously has the Indian Ocean on one side and the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. So, I mean, there are countries which are obviously going to be catalysts for this conversation. But what kind of issues are you hoping to find commonality in other oceans?
Yeah, well, we are very much, let's say, a mission-oriented organization. So we are trying to, let's say, to work with not within the space of the Atlantic Ocean, but also together with other, let's say, research institutions, governments, or civil society from other parts of the same ocean, let's say. You know, so we come up with the idea of have some mission areas. So the common ground would be like focus on clean and productive bays and estuarine areas, basically trying to link, I mean, urban development and ecosystem and biodiversity preservation or restoration. A lot of work has been done on resilience to coastal natural hazards, for example, floods, sea level rise, extreme weather, and basically trying to work with the local communities to adapt and mitigate the effects of climate change. We've been working a lot on sustainable food production and how to balance with biodiversity, preservation, restoration. Also, of course, I mean, working on resource management of ocean, coasts, and marine systems. For us, it's very important to these continuums of land, coasts, and oceans, and also work on environmental and maritime monitoring. Not only, I mean, general modeling, but also specifically, for example, we've been working a lot on detection of marine litter from drones and airplanes and try to come up with some solutions in future, maybe a decade to watching, I mean, to detecting from satellites, things like that. So we are basically, these missions are very common to the whole, I mean, to the whole ocean. Wherever you are, you will find bay estuaries, I mean, biodiverse. So that's what we've been mostly working on, create a kind of a common area where there is a lot of agreement to what to do and how to do.
And in respect of your pole-to-pole perspective, the same issues affect oceans, whether they're around the tropics or in the colder waters, either the Antarctic or the Arctic. But your programs, how do they change from the latitudes?
Oh, I mean, they change a lot, and they are still the same, but they change a lot. You know, yeah. And but no, this idea of pole to pole is not our idea. I mean, this came from the Pole to Pole All Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance that we support very much. So what we are trying to do is to find again common grounds for discussion, for collaboration, and also some project that could work together. I mean, the problems of the Antarctic is very different from the Arctic, for example, very much different. But it's still, if we put these communities talking to each other, maybe they can find ways of collaboration and come to solutions that could be applied elsewhere. And but we basically what we've seen is there's a lot of common, let's say, issues in the tropical Atlantic. They're very common to Africa and Brazil. A good example is sargassum influx in the Caribbean that begins, for example, starts, let's say, in the Gulf of Guinea, West Africa, and marine litter is everywhere. So it's another common ground for discussion and try to find solutions. And more, as I said before, we are linking, let's say, land, coasts, and oceans. We will inaugurate what we call the S-Center Amazonia. So we will link what we call the Green Amazonia with the Blue Amazonia, together with Colombia, together with Peru and Colombia, and also Ecuador, if possible. And just to tell you that the idea is to find, these small groups of people interested of collaboration that could come up with solution of ideas that could be applied elsewhere.
Okay.
And otherwise, we would like to get some ideas from, for example, from Tatiana from Asia and Pacific that could be somehow applied here.
Well, I think that sounds an excellent idea. I think that's a challenge I'm sure Tatiana and the World Ocean Initiative will take up. Okay, well, we're sort of coming close to drawing to a close for our session. I'm going to thank all of the speakers for their input. We're not quite over yet. I'm going to actually ask Tiago if you would like to project forward to some of the agenda that is coming up. I know that you yourselves in the Fundação are great protagonists of the blue agenda in Portugal. So perhaps you can expand on some of the things coming forward, including Tatiana's World Ocean Initiative coming to Portugal. Yeah, there we go.
I was muted. So thank you very much for that question, Roderick. And let me just before answering to your question, asking for apologies to everyone, as I would really need to leave in sort of 5 minutes, as I have to prepare to a call that I will have at 12:30. I apologize for all this, but I'm going to be very brief and say I agree that we are on a crossroads in relation to the ocean issues and to address the ocean crisis, to come up with innovative economic solutions. And I think that it's important that all of us contribute to the momentum that we want to generate. So I don't really see the UN Ocean Conference of next year as any final stop, but just as a stepping stone in the right direction. Oceano Azul Foundation really thinks that we need to increase the level of commitment, of political commitment by member states, United Nations member states, if we will adopt and take the decisions that we've been procrastinating for decades now in relation to the ocean. And of course, again, the High Seas Treaty comes exactly as the first evidence. If we do not have the ambition to agree on a High Seas Treaty, we will go nowhere in terms of decision making for what needs to be decided for oceans in this decade. And so that's why we are, in this respect, so interesting and working so much with the United Nations and also with the European Union to create, to somehow raise the bar of ambition that we think is not there yet. And of course that next year, the World Ocean Summit, which we are very happy, we've been working with economists long time. At that time, as advisor to the President of Portugal, I helped the economist team organizing in I think 2015, Tatiana, to organize the World Ocean Summit that took place in Cascais in Portugal, and we certainly will do our utmost to make sure that the World Ocean Summit that will take place next spring will be a success, and that will contribute to this momentum that I think we all need to gather together. And apologies if I need to leave in 2 or 3 minutes, Roderick.
Okay, well, Tiago, your contribution as always has been fantastic. Thank you very much for that, and of course you're excused.
Apologies to the other panelists, I would say.
All right. I fear that we've lost Professor Hogan, but Tatiana, I'm going to come back to you, and perhaps you could just say something about your expectations for, well, you've got Asia coming up in December, which is obviously important, and then you're coming here in the spring. What are your expectations?
Well, over the next year, I would hope that we would be able to sort of reach some agreements on some of the key targets that need to be met. That we will be. I mean, I'm thinking about some of the actions that have come out this last month. That we'll see more momentum growing around the Women's Empowering Program that was announced earlier this month. I'm a keen advocate and strongly support the concept that women's participation in the global economy goes a long way towards sustainable development, and especially in sectors where they're very much underrepresented, like the maritime sector. So I would like to see a lot of these initiatives take hold. We will be launching our Changemaker Challenge, the third one in March next year, and look forward to sort of hearing and learning from, again, young and/or experienced professionals developing new ideas to create a sustainable ocean economy.
Well, thank you for that, Tatiana. And again, you introduced another important theme, the women's participation. I hope Miguel is listening to that for the blue info in the future, actually. We can, I'm sure, think of that as part of the mix. I think the human rights issues that you brought up earlier too, I hope that will become ever more part of the conversation around this, around the blue economy as well. So I look forward to seeing that. Jose, you get the final word, which I think I hope that is in compensation for being the last of the people on each round. So if you would like a final word, because we're just at the end of our session now.
Just briefly, what we want to do is to collaborate more. I mean, to be present in more and more geographies and collaborate with the economists, collaborate with the Oceano Azul Foundation, collaborate with Miguel and everybody. And because, I mean, my final word to be collaboration is key, absolutely key to address all these challenges. So if the ocean belongs to everybody, and if we do not collaborate, it won't be like national or local solutions or projects won't solve the problems, the global challenges. It's basically collaboration, understanding, conversation. So what we want to create in long term is it's a long-term dialogue framework for us to discuss and solve all these global challenges.
Jose, again, you have summed up perfectly a number of the themes. You've brought us back to the question of collaboration is key. The ocean is for everybody. So I think that's
Thank you,
a very good place to stop. And I can see that Miguel really would like to have participated in this panel himself. So I'll let him have a word now. So I'll pass it back to Miguel. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you so much, Tatiana, Jose, Tiago and Peter that already left, and Roderick. Fantastic moderation.
Yeah, congratulations, Roderick. Fantastic.
Welcome again, Roderick, to the ocean. Just to say that after this fantastic panel, we will have a break. And also 30 minutes after, we will have the Minister of the Sea of Portugal here to do a keynote speech, and straightforward for also a fantastic panel that will link and create bridges between India, the European Union, and the United States. It's because of that reason, to try to connect the East, the Center, and the West, that this panel is at lunchtime for Western Europeans. So I'm sorry for that, but with this we can have all together India, European Union, and United States speaking and trying to create bridges. Again, thank you so much to the speakers and to the moderator, and I will welcome you in 30 minutes for the next panel. Thank you so much.